One of the purposes of this event was to engage the principles of the God's Way of Love organization, which are based on truth, love, humility, service, and fun, in the practical situations and environments, to help any individual who attended this event to become more loving, truthful, and humble in their own day-to-day life. We wanted to give to the land, rather than continue taking from it. So we encouraged anyone planting to plant with love or to not plant at all. This was also an experiment about how love, emotions, expectations, demands affect the environment around us. We wanted to give love to the land in areas that it felt tired and had been overly, excessively used for many years. The objective was to create a wildlife corridor linking a highway bushland traveling stock road, TSR, with the timbered ridge line some 3 kilometers from TSR. The nature strip follows along two creek lines which already had an ample water and some established trees. Our intention was to start the rehabilitation process in one planting and to enjoy each other's company and have fun. What was achieved? Preparing as well as planting 10,000 trees in total. We planted 5,000 over Octoberfest. Built swales to improve hydrology on a large scale with a crawler. Planted bushes, shrubs, and trees for bird habitat, insects, bugs, and creatures. Mulched to help feed and retain water for all the new plants.
Okay, hi guys. We're out in the Octoberfest tree site, and this particular area, which is just below the dam, was an area that we didn't actually swale. So we didn't plant any trees in here, and what's exciting, now that the sheep and the cattle are out of the paddock, we're already starting to get all the regrowth coming up, and you can see actually how well it's growing. And if we just come down here a little bit, you can just see little eucalyptus trees coming up everywhere through here. And what happened was, about 30 years ago, a bulldozer would have taken all the topsoil out of here to make the dam. If Lena just looks up the hill there, you can see the bank of that dam. So all the dirt came out of here to fill that dam. So it's a really hard, dry spot. But you can see how all the seeds already just coming through here brilliantly at the moment. So nature's just starting the process of regeneration all by itself. So all we've had to do that is just take the livestock out of here. So quite exciting. So this is only 6 months, and already we're starting to get seedlings coming up everywhere. So none of these have been planted, and it's really exciting just to see all the natural regrowth starting to happen all by itself. So just by taking all the animals out of the paddock, now there's an opportunity for all these seedlings to start coming up. And this site's going to look very different in about 3 or 4 years' time. Just the whole way down through the creek system here is already changing. You can see the way the reeds have taken over the whole creek. So that's really good from the erosion point of view, just having that completely filled up with reeds now too. Whereas in the old days, when the cattle used to come in here, there'd be tracks all through there where the cattle would be crossing the creek and wanting to eat in there. And that's all filled in very, very quickly. You can see on the other side there where there's some wattles all coming up and all the ferns are coming back. So it's really starting to forest up very quickly. And all we had to do, as I say, was just move the livestock out of the paddock and keep them out of here for this to happen. So with this little section through here, there's been very little livestock activity in here for about 1.5 years now. And most of us have a belief that when we have lots of grass, that nothing's going to grow through the grass. And you can see all the little eucalyptus seedlings all through here. Yet this paddock hasn't had stock in it for 1.5 years now. and it's quite thick with grass, and yet they're just all coming up through that thick layer of grass. There's even kikuyu grass here, and then there's a few natives, and so it's pretty exciting just to see that regeneration will happen as soon as we just allow it to happen. So we often want to force it, and just by the simple thing of resting country, we give it that opportunity to really start to happen. And obviously this seed's come by nearby, so the seed's quite close, and this is going to be a real thick mass in the next year or two, which is really exciting. Hi guys, so we're in some of the tree plantings now. These trees were planted in October 2011. It's now April 2012, so this little guy's got 6 months growth on him, and I'm 182 centimeters tall, and he's already starting to overpower me. So what's exciting to see is some of these trees are really starting to get excited and bounce out of the ground, which is just fantastic. You can see in front of him there's just a couple of little shrubs that are going to be here as well. Obviously they're not as fast as growing as the big wattles. All these trees were planted at exactly the same time. So this guy here is just heading towards 2 meters tall in 6 months growth. So that's pretty good growth for 6 months. If I go 1, 2, 3, 4 meters across, this guy's less than half a meter tall. So both these guys were planted at exactly the same time and had exactly the same treatment. And as you can see, they're both mulched really well. They're in exactly the same soil. And even if you look at the swale, they're both on exactly the same side of the swale. So we know when we look at this guy compared to that guy that there's something else going on that's determining why he's so much taller than his little mate beside him. So, because all these trees have come from exactly the same nursery too. So they both have the potential to grow as big as each other. So we know that there's something going on when we can see this huge variation in growth from tree to tree. So guys, one thing I've noticed since we've locked this block up is just the massive change in bird life. There was always parrots in here, but now most days I think there's sort of 400 or 500 birds of different types all scattered through here, and that's just been a massive change. And I think one of the reasons why is there's just so much more food here than what there used to be. Now that the sheep and the cattle are out of here, there's so much more grass seed for them, and they feel like it's more of a home now. We've locked it up from our traditional methods of grazing it regularly and constantly, that now there's actually a spot where the birds can really be part of it. So that's really exciting, just how quickly that change has happened. We haven't really done too much yet. There's this massive bird life coming in here. So we never have had king parrots here before, and now there's families of king parrots coming in. We've never had red brow finches here, and now there's little families of red brow finches coming in. So lots of different varieties. And what's really interesting is that a lot of this country used to be quite magpie dominant. There were lots of magpies, but not very much else. Now the magpies and the kookaburras and all those guys seem to be mixing in with all these other guys, and it seems like they feel like there's room for everybody. It's not like there doesn't seem to be a real fight for areas and stuff like that. So if we get an opportunity, we'll see if we can show you, but you'll often see many different types of birds all in the one tree, which is really cool to see them all actually instigating with each other. So with all these trees we planted, what we've noticed is the most important part is the land prep. So you can still see they've got lots of mulch around them, and when you get in close, it's really soft and it's really starting to break down. So even when you smell it, it's no longer loose and hay, it's starting to break down. And this mulch, that's what's keeping them nice and moist over the summer when it was quite hot. And also with the weeds, it's what's kept all the grass and the competition away from the plant while it's growing. So these guys have had no chemical sprays on them. They've had nothing other than just mulch and a little bit of fertilizer when they went in. So in 6 months, you can see actually how tall they can actually really grow if they're really well looked after. You can see up on this top of the site, this was an old sheep camp. So when the sheep were in this paddock, this would be where they'd be sleeping at night time. So there could be 100 sheep here, or sometimes there could be 2,000 or 3,000 sheep all up on this sheep camp up here sleeping. There's quite a lot of manure up here. There's quite a lot of compaction up here. So you can notice that there's a lot of thistles up through this top section. And most people generally freak out when they see thistles, but these thistles are actually doing a really great job up here. Thistles have a really great taproot, so they're really opening the soil up. They're bringing minerals in, and they're bringing some nitrogen in as well. So they're fixing the nitrogen balance in the soil as well. When their job's done, they'll just disappear. If we allow the thistles to do their job rather than cutting them down and seeing them as a pest or an annoyance, then you're allowing the process to really start to heal the country. So it's great when you can see thistles like this. You can see that nature's starting the process of a regeneration. So guys, we're at the top of the tree planting site at the moment. This particular paddock was a very sick paddock when we started, and it's just awesome seeing the process that it's actually going through now. So if we start to have a look up in the paddock, if you're a farmer, you'd be absolutely horrified if you saw a paddock like this. The weed that you see in there is sort of telling you that the paddock is a worthless paddock. What you can see, most of the covering up there is called fleabone. Fleabone's a weed of North America. From my side, it feels as if the paddock's starting to heal itself. So the fleabones come in to actually start re-energizing the whole paddock. To have fleabone, there's generally a high magnesium level in the soil. It's dealing with some of those issues. Also, there's a huge compaction issue up here. Most of the topsoil has been washed out of this paddock, so it's got a very low topsoil, and it's been constantly badly managed for over 150 years, this paddock. It's been ploughed, it's been sown, and basically being raped for a long period of time. So it's having to start the whole process all over again. So we've actually planted trees up in here, and if I was doing it again, I sort of feel that we would be best to let the paddock recover and the soil recover before we went in with planting trees. So in future projects like this, my feelings and recommendations would be to treat the soil and the paddock first and leave the trees for later. So if we just left it for 12 months to do this regeneration and feel and connect with what sort of minerals the soil needs to start the process of healing again, that would have been a lot more beneficial than trying to speed up the process with planting of trees. Because even though we planted trees in here, this process is still happening anyway. So I sort of feel in another year or two, once the fleabone starts to do what it needs to do, then it's going to change the whole feel of the paddock again, and the paddock will go through a whole makeover. So what's good about the fleabone is too that it's just going to break down, so we're going to have a massive organic matter coming up in through there. it's opening up all the compaction and the toxicity of the soil as well. So the paddock in the last few years was just covered in what we call blady grass. So it's an unpalatable plant, and since the flea bones come in, that seems to have changed. It's shrunken in the area that's now taken over by blady grass. So it's really exciting just to see what's happening up in this paddock, and we'll go and have a bit of a look. So guys, now we're actually in the paddock, and as you can see, it's really thick through here, and yeah, there's just flea bone everywhere. If we have a look at the flea bone, so this is the flea bone plant. So what you'll find with flea bone is that it has a main taproot that you can see there, and as a plant, so this is all going to do a fantastic job just aerating the soil and opening it up. You can see all these roots here too. This is how we bring carbon into the soil with all these roots. As this plant dies down, we're just going to be bringing a massive reserve of carbon into the soil. So you can see from that plant, you know, just what a root structure it is. And this is in a soil that would be deemed toxic, yet this plant's just got this massive amount of a root structure. So here's one that's died, and that gives you a bit of an idea. So this flea bone's dead, but you see how it's got this main taproot on it, and that's what's really helping air the soil. So and then all the little roots come off it. So if we can, so you can compare the two plants there. So as it dies down, all these little bits of root here, they all die down the soil, and that's all your carbon going in. So we're just creating a whole new soil in this paddock using this weed. And as a farmer, you see this, and the first thing you want to do is slash it or knock it down or do something with it. Yet when you have a look in what it's actually doing, it's just doing a fantastic job. And then if we sort of dig in behind here, make a bit of a path, you can see one of the eucalypts here, and it's actually doing really well. And probably the main reason it's doing well is we've just got this really good mulch in here. So that's just a mulch and it's just loosened hay. So the mulch we've been using is just water damaged loosened hay, and that mulch is really just giving it the kickstart that it needs. It's got a tree guard in here. You can see also, there's kangaroos and stuff that live in here as well. So the tree guard's been quite helpful. But it's about 1.5 meters in 6 months growth. So, it's highly likely in 12 months growth, this guy's going to be 2.5 meters high. So pretty exciting in a toxic paddock. And we'll go for a bit more of a look around and see what else we can find in here. But you can just look over here. If Lena comes around here, by the way, Lena's running the camera today, so thanks to Lena. And she can just zoom in there and you can just see how thick it is. And just imagine that all breaking down, and suddenly we're getting this organic matter. If Lena comes down to my hand here, you can see there's a leaf. That's all the leaf. And then I'll just bring that to the camera, and you just break that down like that. That's all going to be good for the paddock. We see things like flea bone as a weed, but how can it be a weed if it's actually doing something really good for the paddock? The first time I came in here, I looked into this paddock, and if Lena just takes the camera up the valley there, I looked in here, I thought, man, there's nothing in here. Everything's dead and died, and it was this really weird feeling, because I came in for the paddock and it looks so wrong. Like, it looks, in my belief system as a paddock, this looks like a paddock that's in really sick. But when you come in here and you feel the paddock, it feels really good in here. It feels like there's things happening. It feels like there's this recovery process happening. So it's a really unique feeling when you come into a paddock like this that's just starting that process. Because in the past, I'd be terrified if I saw a paddock like this. Whereas when you walk in here and you see all this, and you can see what happens when I jump on it and squash it down, there's a lot of material here. You look at this plant here, there's a lot of material coming. So that's all just going to break down and mulch down over the next few months. And you think of the amount of organic matter and product that we've got here to start reforming soil again. This paddock also was very acidic, so this flea bone's going to really help with the acidity of the paddock. We'll go and see what else we can find in here. So if you look down here, we've got a little Banksia, and if you notice the colour, it's actually quite a rich green in here, and this guy's going really well. He's got a good litter of mulch around him, so the mulch is really doing a really good job. And you can see, so his colour is really nice, rich, and we're actually starting to get a bit of growth out of this Banksia. And so you can notice with this little Banksia here, you can see how his leaves don't have that dark green. There's that yellowiness and a bit of a brown spotting and grey spotting coming on. So he's just not as happy as the guy next door, and he's literally only 4 metres from the Banksia beside him. Just thought I'd show you this eucalypt here. He was planted in September, and so he's just coming up 7 months old, and he's just over 2 metres tall in 7 months. And you can see again down here, he's just got this really beautiful thick mulch on him. And it's this mulch that's really combating quite a lot of the mineral deficiencies in the soil. And if we just zoom into his trunk, I sort of try to take quite a lot of notice of the thickness of the trunk. So you can see here, that trunk thickness is really starting to happen. So he's about nearly 20 millimetres across in the trunk already at 7 months. If he grows to his full potential, he'll be a 60-metre tree. So, there's a possibility if we start to get this soil right that over time he's going to be able to fulfil that. You can look at his leaves. You can just see all those tips on the edge of the leaf. That's all new growth that's just happened recently. And the first thing quite a few guys noticed when they came in this paddock is actually how warm it is in here. So the warmth's going to really help this guy over winter. We'll come back and check up on him and see how he's going. And if you just take a bit of a look through the paddock, you can see how he's not in any better soil than anywhere else in the paddock. So, he's just sitting up on a swale. What will limit him in the future is if we are slow to continue to keep improving the soil, he'll get to a stage where he just won't want to grow any further. So that's where this whole process of rehabilitation is so important for him. So it gets quite exciting that we can see this in such a short period of time in a paddock that would be deemed very, very sick. It had a very acidic, very low pH, very mineral deficient in just about everything, and no real topsoil. We're now in the paddock where we just planted out with eucalypts. This paddock's quite a good soil paddock, and if you notice as Lena scrolls through the paddock, there's not the flea bone or the weeds or thistles in the paddock. You can just see the eucalypts starting to pop their heads up through the grass. So the grass is about half a metre to a metre high in a lot of parts of that paddock. And then if you notice as we go towards the eucalypts where it starts to get thicker with older timber, you'll notice that you can start to see there's thistles and flea bone in there. So what used to happen in this paddock was the sheep would come down and graze where Lena's just been showing you the ewes coming up. And then they'd go and sleep during the day and at night in amongst those eucalypt trees, those older, bigger trees. And that's the only place where the thistles and the flea bone are in the paddock. So it sort of gives you a really good idea of just what happens in some of these paddocks where livestock are constantly grazing. So there's obviously quite a lot of manure up there from them sleeping and staying up there during the day. But also that would be the most intensely grazed part of the paddock too. You know, whenever sheep or cattle moved out of this paddock, that'd be the sweetest grass because that's where all the fertilizer is in the paddock. So the animals would be constantly putting pressure on that part of the paddock compared to down lower. So it sort of makes sense that that's the part of the paddock that is in the most amount of damage and needing the most amount of work done on it. So nature sort of shows you that quite well in this paddock, just, you know, where the health and fertility is and where it's really lacking. So you can see just with what's happened in 6 months, just how quickly things can happen and how quickly we can really start to make a difference to the land and the whole system. You know, there's bird life moving back in, there's all the insects coming back in, and there's food for all of it too. There's shelter. So we've noticed masses of frogs moving back in. So all the little stuff that goes unobserved day in, day out, now has an opportunity to live within our environment. So I get excited about that, and I look forward to showing you guys in another 6 months just how quickly these changes take place and what the possibility is if we just make that first step. Because it's just taking that first step and thinking, well, it's time now to make a difference and make a change. And if we start at that point, it gets really exciting with what we can do. So thanks guys for hanging out with us for a few minutes, and we'll see you soon.